my family was in the mix. My family was in the mix. That kind of led us out west. You know what I mean? It was time to. It was our exodus. You know what I mean? Life was crazy. Drugs, guns, criminal activity, high profile criminal activity. Young mother. Mom was always on point. Mom was kind of like the glue. You know what I mean? That kept her family straight. She was a young mother, but she knew, the way she came up, she knew what she wanted for her family. But it just so happens that our families, on my father's side, and through that, we was in a lot of things that I'm not, you know what I mean? Those kind of things. So it was hectic, but it was a lot of love. I remember, like, even now we look back, me and my siblings talk, we look back and like, those were some like the most dangerous environments and places to be in, but it was so much fun. One thing we talk about, like how much fun it was and how much love we had amongst ourselves, and even in our little section, our block. Like I said, we were Jamaican, so even the people on the block, they knew each other before they came to America. You know what I mean? So that whole dynamic of community, we came up in community.
Now, when you were young, not to cut you off, when you were younger, your mom and dad were still together?
They were still together.
Okay.
They were still together. It wasn't they was together. Maybe when they even shouldn't have been.
Okay.
When she should have been 2 fingers gone. My mom endured a lot. We watched her go through a lot. In turn, we went through a lot. A lot of, things are being labeled now, what you would call traumatizing and all this other shit. I mean, we've been through all of that shit, you know what I mean? Some of the scariest shit, you know what I mean? But, yeah, we've been through a lot. I think that's a lot of that fabric goes into who we are now in terms of how we navigate space, people, communities, da-da-da-da-da-da, you know what I mean? Brooklyn in the 80s was maddening, but it was the dopest shit. It was the dopest shit. It was the dopest shit. I look back with the fondest of memories.
Now,
fondest.
A question: how? Because you mentioned your mom's presence and how she held stuff down. Talk to me about your dad a little bit. How influential was he in that time? Like, what was your relationship like with him?
Yeah, so that was where all the bullshit came in. I used to say, just coming up and the animosity and all this shit, I used to be like, mom just like God in our life and pop's just like the opposite, you know what I mean? A lot of the stuff we were supposed to came through, the shit that black men get into, go through and all of that. So pops was there. He wasn't the best example. My pops was always there. My pops is a funny ass, like a lot of our humor and stuff we get from him. A lot of our intelligence and street smarts we get directly from him. You know what I mean? My mom was more naive, and to how we ended up in a lot of spaces. My pops was sharp, stern, iron fists, as we would say now, like I guess the Jamaican culture is very now you say, like, I didn't know, misogynistic type shit, you know what I mean? So we got a lot of man shit from Pop. Some shit was just very unnecessary. But he was always there, even when mom did take her breaks and split and everything. We never not knew who daddy was or where he was and shit like that.
Okay.
So he was there, he's there to this day, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, you still have a relationship with him now?
Yeah. And even as a man now, I learned it's everybody's first time here for the last time. Nobody got to do it before. So kind of what you get is what you get. If people, people have you can grow, you go through shit. You'd be surprised if you have a conversation with your parents or your grandparents, the shit that they went through, like talk to them about their life, you know what I mean? Certain shit in my manhood I come to understand. Forgive to be forgiven, kind of thing. So mom was there, pops was there, and we had a hell of a ride in between all the shit, the good, the bad, the up, the down, the loops, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like most families.
Yeah, like most families.
Yeah, that's how that shit goes. Now, another question I wanted to ask you, like I was saying, like we were talking about off air, looking at your brothers and like how grounded you guys seem just for a long time, even before I even knew why. It just seemed like y'all was grounded in something. So that consciousness or that awareness, explain to me where that came from.
How can I mix that? So like I said, we went through a lot. We've been through a lot. So on the worldly end, we've seen a lot of shit together, from babies into adulthood. Understand how that works and the need for, I guess, naturally how we function as brothers. On the flip side, my mom's and her side, there's a lot of God, you know what I mean? It was a lot of spirituality. I remember when we was young, we used to fall asleep. Mom used to have Bible studies with us like a mug, you know what I mean? It's sort of spirit of love, God, you know what I mean? Those kind of things kind of mold into us. Again, we come from a culture. So I even, let me segue. So even when I came to California and we had like Bloods and Crips, I didn't know what that shit was, and, black people here, it was very different for me. Like, you know what I mean? Because we come from actual preserved culture. You know what I mean? Like, black Americans for the most part be like, we black. You know what I mean? But we had traditions, we had culture, we had, you know what I mean? So all those things were already in our mix to a certain extent. I mean, as much as my dad ain't with, you know what I mean, he's just coming into an old age, coming into a level of consciousness, if you will. When I was young, only thing my dad used to always say, Marcus Garvey. Marcus Garvey. I didn't know nothing about Marcus Garvey, because he's a proud Jamaican, nigga, Marcus Garvey. And it wasn't until I hit my early teens that I kind of brought that I would say that awareness, culture, the identity of blackness into my family. You know what I mean? That wasn't something that was under our roof. Now my uncles, my mom's brothers, they was on some shit. I would call them like my first teachers that gave me the lane. You know what I mean? I started learning a lot through my uncles, and I think that's, that me being the older brother, you know how that go. Your younger brothers kind of pick up a little bit of what you do, what you're into. That's where all that come in at. So that's extremely interesting. That's why I asked the question. So you're saying, like, your pops, you explaining to me who he was, but he wasn't necessarily a person that was aware of things. Damn, my dad's in more ways than one. He's like my dad's an ignorant ass motherfucker, like real shit. No, sir. What we got from him is the world, the street smarts, the harsh shit. You know what I mean? Punishment and whoopings and other shit. You know what I mean? We got all of that. You know what I mean? Our sense of survival and skill and know how to navigate. You know what I mean? We got that from him. I think we got love and bond and trust and all from mom, and everything else was from the. It was one or that in my household. It was this or that. It was extreme left and extreme right with love and all that. But no, the ideas of blackness, cultural, all that was like my thing. That was the thing that's been on me since I was young. And then I got fed from my uncles.
Okay, so you say that was on you from when you were young. Why do you think that is? Do you think it was just something naturally inside you that felt like some shit wasn't right?
Not even so much. It started on the spiritual end, right? It's that all of that, because it all ties in when you see the bigger picture. But that'd be a different conversation. But I'm gonna kind of give you a synopsis. It starts off with spirituality for me. You know what I mean? My relationship with the Creator, God, and so on and so forth. I remember one time when I was young, I just God, tell me the truth. I want to know the truth of the matters. You know what I mean? Good, bad, and difference. I want to know the truth of shit. And searching for truth, higher truth, it brings you into consciousness and your truth and the truth of the planet where you at and the truth of your identity and all those things. So it all started at the source for me, which is the Creator.
Got it. All right. Now, so looking at a lot of the stuff that you do here in our city, like when I'm on Facebook or on the internet, when I'm just looking at what's going on as far as the community of people that's aware of what we need as black folks, as melanated people, I always see you in the mix of something, like always. Look like you spend a lot of your time doing, you know what I'm saying, which is a great thing. So talk to me about why was it important for you to not, because you can be a person who think and do knowledge on history, know who you are, and don't do shit. So what made you go from knowing who you were to actually activating that and doing something?
The difference between wisdom and knowledge is wisdom is knowledge in action. You know what I mean? It's being wise about what you know. I always say the same thing. It's like knowledge is no good unless you sharing it, passing it, giving it away for free. Right? Because anything that is good, which is good for me, I should want for you, and I shouldn't put a penny on it if I don't have to, if I can't. You know what I mean? That shouldn't be. That moved me into action. The fact that it's like money. Like we could be in this room right now, and we could be piled to the ceiling with $100 bills, the whole room. What good is it if you're not spending it, right? It's supposed to be, and it's the same thing with knowledge and information. You got to act on it. You got to move on it in any capacity that you can. My journey started in a group home, working with black boys. Black-owned group home, working with black boys. And then other people came through, other races, but for the most part, we housed young black males. So I would say me actually activating that outside of my group and my homies, you know, we be smoking this shit, and I always be the one talking about nigga this shit, you know what I mean? But my first piece of moving into that action was working in a group home. To this day, I still got a dynamic.